To the National Tropical Weather Live channel, HurricaneCenterLive.com. It's brought to you by USAA, South Padre Island Tourist and Convention Bureau, and Plylox Hurricane Clips. It is a team effort together with Tim Smith and Bill Reed. And this morning, Tim Smith is live down in South Texas. Good morning, Tim.
Program this morning. We hope to have a great program lined up for you today. We are having some technical issues with Erik right now. We hope to get him online soon. He's joining us from the Wall of Wind in South Florida, so we hope to have him on shortly. Alex mentioned our sponsors, and we couldn't do this without them. They are so important. You mentioned USAA, who has been a sponsor of all of our programs now for quite some time, and we sincerely appreciate everything USAA does. Also, Plylox, new this year to our program, but we really appreciate Plylox. These little guys right here. I saw a lot of my neighbors using these when Hurricane Hannah was getting close. One of them rushed out to buy them a couple of days before, but got the plywood up in plenty of time. And of course, we were spared the worst of that storm here in deep South Texas. I'm about 80 miles in, about 70 miles inland from the Gulf of Mexico, so it wasn't all that bad here, fortunately. The other sponsor, South Padre Island Convention and Visitors Bureau, we want to thank them. And I thought I'd show you something because there's always talk about, is the beach a place to be during this pandemic? And I thought I'd show you what it looks like this morning on South Padre Island. A little hazy, but look down at the beach down there, and you can see across the bottom of the screen, those are umbrellas that are set up, but they're not open yet because the umbrellas are not opened up because there's so few people there right now. School has started. Now, a week ago, all those umbrellas were up, but they're all about 15 feet apart, and that's the rules. That's the laws that are set out by the city there, that you can be on the city beaches, but you have to be those umbrellas, single pedestal umbrellas. That's it. That's the only structures that can be there. And the poles have to be at least 15 feet apart. And the groups have to be less than 10 people. So they're doing a good job of social distancing. That's what it looks like this morning. Looking back toward the causeway, it's a beautiful morning, green, because there's been a lot of rain, but as green as it gets there. Of course, during the storm last week, during Laura, the water was very high. They had a storm surge into South Padre Island. We are 300 miles at least, more than 300 miles from where the eye made landfall. And this water was way up on the bay side. Like we're looking at the bay side here, water was over all the boat docks. You see the docks down here, the docks were underwater. It didn't last very long. It lasted just a few minutes, but we had effect of the storm surge here as well. I was looking northeast, and again, a week ago, this would have been full of people. So if you're looking for a beach getaway, now that the school has started again, it certainly is quieter. And of course, that's looking northward up the island. Again, a lot of these bayside restaurants and bars right up in the middle of the picture up here, I had water right up to the edge when Laura went into Louisiana. And again, we're a long way away, but yet we had a storm surge this far south that was pretty significant, both on the beach side and the bay side. Go back to that first picture. The water was beyond the bottom edge of this picture. On the beach during that storm as well. So, but South Padre Island is open for business and encouraging and in fact enforcing social distancing. If somebody tries to set up a tent on the island, they are there in 5 minutes to tell you to take it back down. It happens in a hurry. So they're really doing a good job of social distancing. So thanks to our sponsor, South Padre Island Convention and Visitors Bureau, for being part of that. A lot going on in the tropics today, very active. So for that, let's go to Bill Reed, former director of the National Hurricane Center, to give us an update on what's happening right now. And hopefully by the time you're done with the update, maybe Erik will get his technical problems resolved and be able to join us. Bill, good morning.
It's going to be a stream of consciousness, folks. But to start with, back to Plylox, we were putting up our window fabric, hurricane fabric on our windows. And I still had a box of Plylox. Saw the neighbor putting up his plywood, and he didn't have enough of them. So I found good use for them instead of just sitting on the shelf in the garage. They work. Good product. All right. Well, I'm going to get this screen shared up here. Okay. How's it working, guys? You got it?
Yeah.
The tropical weather outlook that was issued earlier this morning, we'll talk about Nana and Omar in a second or two here. Of big interest is this wave. It's just now coming off of Cape Verde into the tropical Atlantic, is given a 60% chance by the forecasters at NHC of developing into a tropical storm. And indeed, the models are excited about it. No way you can tell where it's going to impact at all in the U.S. It's almost 5,000 miles away. Can't pinpoint that far away. Another small system down here, we only give it a 30% chance of developing, but given the track record this year, let's watch it for a little while. Okay, Nana formed yesterday. It's a tiny tropical cyclone. Here's the latest advisory on it. There's now a hurricane warning for Belize, much of the Belize coast, but only a small section, as you can see, a small part of Guatemala down there. This is the entire storm, tropical storm force winds. This small yellow circle there is the extent of the tropical storm winds. And these tiny storms, it's not going to be impacted much by proximity to land, I don't think. And the forecast has it actually being a hurricane in between the forecast points, because after landfall, it'll quickly drop down to tropical storm. So it'll either be a strong storm or a Cat 1 hurricane at landfall. Then it goes out into the southern Mexico, and some of the models, track models, maintain an entity and bring it out into the Pacific Ocean. And there have been cases where storms like this have redeveloped as an Eastern Pacific tropical cyclone. Not really seeing that right now. A small storm should fall apart pretty drastically in the rough terrain that it's going to go over Guatemala and Mexico. Go back here a minute. Omar, which hasn't been talked about much and probably doesn't deserve much. It's an interest to shipping only. It also has only a small area of tropical storm force winds. It's forecast to weaken by tomorrow to depression and be an extratropical or post-tropical low, meandering slowly to the east across the mid-latitudes of the Atlantic Ocean. On the satellite, there's Omar. You can see just one little tiny ball of convection there. Nana has more convection than it's increasing convection since yesterday at this time, and it's concentrated in a great blow up of convection right around the center right now in there, which is one of the things you might want to look out for maybe a little intensification before it makes landfall overnight tonight in the area there. The Gulf of Mexico is free of any convection. Big dominant high pressure in here that's given record heat. Galveston 2 days in a row is set now tied their all-time record low for an overnight warm temperature of 87. A lot of convection in the Caribbean. None of that shows much of interest in intensifying at this time. Yeah, go further east. You can monitor the African waves as they come eastward or westward. Here's the one that's just coming off Africa now and expected to develop as it gets more towards the area in between Africa and the Caribbean islands. Another wave here, another wave back here. So the wave train at the peak of the season is well energized and should be a very exciting next couple of weeks for those in the hurricane business. Not to be outdone, the Western Pacific woke up after a strangely quiet beginning of the season. We've actually had more storms in the Atlantic to date than they have. Here is Maysak, Typhoon Maysak. It was 130 mile an hour storm when it came real close to Okinawa. They had gusts to 100 miles an hour there, and it's going to make landfall within the next few hours. Let's say 90 knot hurricane, typhoon in South Korea, probably just below what their record is for extreme hurricanes or typhoons in their country. But they shouldn't let their guard down. This is a huge system down here forming. Is probably Haishen is its name. It's just now reached typhoon status, and the models forecast it to get it there. There we go. Joint Typhoon Warning Center. This is their forecast for Maysak, showing it making a landfall in South Korea. And we'll go up here. Okay, and this is the Haishen forecast Still a lot of uncertainty, of course, as to the event. Yes, just yesterday it was aiming at the South Island of the main islands of Japan. Now it's down in the Ryukyus in 4 days and 4 to 5 day, 4 to 6 day time frame, reaching South Korea. Okay, Tim, that's what I've got on the tropics. So what do we have next?
We're still waiting to see if we can get Erik in here. Just for an update, if you're just joining us, today's scheduled speaker is Erik Salna from the Wall of Wind in Florida, but we're having technical difficulties getting Erik in here. So we're just going to kind of talk for a little bit. And if we get him, we will. If not, we'll reschedule him. So we appreciate you staying with us long enough to see if we can resolve the technical problem. We did a test yesterday and everything was fine. So hopefully we'll get him in here soon. Thanks, Casper Gregory, for the link that you sent us on the Facebook page. Thank you. We'll check that out. We appreciate you sending that over to us. Bill, when we look at the Atlantic and you look at Omar and you look at Nana, the storms that are out there right now, historically, 30, 40 years ago, would those storms have been, would we have seen those storms pre-satellite? Would they have been upgraded? Would they have been given names? Because I know that now with the great, satellites and everything we have, we see more and can do more.
That's a good question. Chris Lanzi and some colleagues did an exhaustive study on that, and they came to the conclusion that in the pre-satellite era, we were probably missing 2 to 3 of these kind of storms per season on average. It just depends on where they're forming. Omar, when it first formed up, was on the shipping lanes along the East Coast, so there may have been a chance that it would have been captured after the fact from ship logs, or if they radioed it in. But not having a strong tropical signature in those days, they probably would have not labeled it as such. It's hard to speculate what people would think. Nana, the impact on any, so far there's been, I think I saw wind gusts of 39 over at Kingston, Jamaica in a thunderstorm yesterday. But no pressure falls of any consequence on the land-based stations. Unless a ship had gotten into one of them, we wouldn't have known it was there until it made landfall in Belize.
So it's a different time. We talk about that being a record year. In 2005 was a record year. 33, of course, was big. And 33 was pre-satellite by a significant amount. So I wonder what 33 really would have been had we had technology that we have today.
Yeah, that was a season that a lot of people used to benchmark on the argument about whether we're missing storms or not. You overlay a map of the shipping lanes, and the areas outside of them is where you'd wonder if you've missed the storms.
Exactly. We're still working on Erik, still trying to get him in. He's working on getting an internet connection for us. Again, we tested Erik yesterday. Everything was great, but he's been trying for the last hour to get in, but he's trying some new things right now. So hopefully we'll get him in here. So stay with us for just a few more minutes, and if we can get him, we will. We'll go just a few more minutes to see if we can get him in here. The latitude of South Korea is up about 35 north. That's pretty far north for a strong storm. I mean, that's comparable to what the Carolinas, maybe a little north of that. I'm not looking at a map right now. But
that's South Carolina. 30 would be about Jacksonville, so 35 maybe Myrtle Beach, 40 something around Philadelphia. And our recurving storms on the west side of the oceans, they're frequently big hurricanes all the way up into New England and even Canada, as long as they stay near warm water. And although the water does cool off as you get into the Japan Sea and the West Sea, just to the west side of Korea, it's not rapid, so there's a chance that these storms, usually they're moving faster. This one's staying at about the 10 to 12 knot range of movement. By the time they get there, they're usually moving faster.
Fascinating stuff. We were talking, I've shown the pictures from South Padre a minute ago and talking about the storm surge that we had on South Padre from Laura. The surge or the rise in the water was probably
12-fan wall of wind facility at FIU.
In the neighborhood, 3 feet maybe. Docks that were typically above water, docks typically would be, had a foot of water on top of them. The docks are completely underwater. How far-reaching do storm surges go out in a situation like that? What have you seen? What's, as far as range, not just depth, but range?
The range is dictated by the size of the storm, so the amount of water that the circulation is impacting the current on. The geography of the Gulf of Mexico pretty much dictates that you're going to pile up water along the northwest facing coastline, north and west facing coastlines for a storm moving southeast to northwest, as large as Laura was for a day or two. If it had been a stronger hurricane when it came out in the Gulf, kind of like Ike was, you would have had even more tide down that way, because it gets the water, all the big waves, the swells are moving, so you get a run up of water on the beaches.
I had a good sound from a friend who lives in Port Isabel, and talked about how she was on her deck outside, not near the water, kind of a second level deck, and she heard this noise. Wasn't sure what it was, and she heard the boat kind of moving around, and she looked down, and the water was rising, and it came up. Said it came all the way over, up above the dock level. Lasted 20 minutes, and then it went right back out again. It was a relatively quick thing.
Yeah. For those that have read the stories of the histories of the 1900 storm that wrecked Galveston, they were perplexed by the rise in the tide and the huge waves that were coming in when the wind was out of the north. And at the time, they didn't have the theories on storm surge and how the storm affects the tides well away from the storm back then.
Fascinating. We've come so far. We've all got the book that we're reading, Furious Sky, and reading about the hurricanes of the 1400s and 1500s, and when they realized that, hey, this is not just something that affects me.
Yeah, and each one throws a new wrinkle.
Let's go. So let's see if we can get him on here. If we do, we'll go to him. You're ready with his intro if he shows up. So we'll have that shortly. We appreciate those of you who are hanging with us this morning. Sorry, we're 20 minutes in and don't have our guest yet, but we hope to have him shortly. And if he does, we'll get to him so he can get the presentation. I think it's going to be fascinating. It's going to be great to see what he's got to say. The wall of wind. Our meteorologist Andrew Chung went over there to Florida 3 or 4 years ago and did a story with Erik and the wall. And brought back some video that we shared on our TV station. So it's fascinating stuff. We've got some good videos to show. I think it's going to be a good presentation. So
I'll give you some of Erik's history. So I'll use up his time doing that. I met Erik when I first went over to the HurricaneCenter 2007, and helped lead an effort called the Disaster Survival House. And it was a house built in Deerfield, Great. He has 25 years experience as a broadcast meteorologist, and he says he still does some freelance on that. The most interesting tidbit he put in his bio was his most exciting experience was, and I think we've got Erik, don't we?
He is online.
Yes, can you hear me?
I'll turn it over to you right now.
Say that again, Bill.
The show is all yours right now. I've already introed you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to be able to share screen and jump right into it.
Great, and welcome to the show. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. All right. Okay. How are we doing? Can you see my first slide?
We got it.
All right. Well, again, thank you, Alex and Tim and Bill, for the opportunity to be a part of the conference and as a speaker. And we're going to cover a lot of different topics, if you will, where the focus will be on the wall of wind. And I'm going to provide lots of information too. So get ready for some great resources with regards to mitigation and resilience and the Extreme Events Institute and the Wall of Wind. So I wanted to first off, just real quick, start out with the contact information. I'll show it again at the end of the presentation. There's my email for Erik Salna, esalna@fiu.edu. And you can follow us on Facebook at FIU Extreme Events Institute, and on Twitter at FIU Extreme Event. All right, well, I know you've probably had your tropical weather briefing, and obviously we had Laura make landfall, and that's a whole nother program. So many things to talk about with regards to Hurricane Laura and its impacts, and from a meteorological standpoint. But I just wanted to start with that briefly because, you know, this is a satellite build. So all of us, if there are ways that we can help various nonprofit organizations in that effort, they certainly could use the help. Just wanted to kind of start that off with that message. Quick graphic, some of you may have already seen this. It's just kind of looking at all the watches and warnings for this hurricane season through August 31st, just to kind of reiterate how busy we've already been and how many parts of our U.S. coastline have had threats. Eye of the Storm. This is, I just wanted to mention, this is a brand new 12-part hurricane education video series that does include mitigation and the wall of wind. And if you're interested, it's a free hurricane series. Just Google Eye of the Storm and the Museum of Discovery and Science, the logo on the lower right-hand side with regards to hurricane preparedness. So quick plug, if you want to share this as an educational resource, especially with teachers and students. All right, I'm here at Florida International University, and if you're not aware of us, we're a part of the 12-member state university system of Florida. And believe it or not, we rank as the 4th largest public university with enrollment in the nation with over 55,000 students. And we're a majority minority institution with a very diverse student body, predominantly Hispanic. And we're also known for our research, and we are known as an R1 doctoral university's highest research activity classified by the Carnegie Institute. So the Extreme Events Institute and the International Hurricane Research Center, we do different areas of research in addition to the wall of wind. We have what's called disaster risk and resilience in the Americas, disaster risk reduction. What can we do to improve that with regards to countries throughout Central America and the Caribbean? We have what's called the Florida Public Hurricane Loss Model, where we work with the Office of Insurance and Regulation with the state of Florida. It's a model that helps predict what the cost may be from a landfalling hurricane. And we have a storm surge model called CEST, and we collaborate with the National Hurricane Center with regards to a storm surge prediction and modeling with their slosh. So it's a great collaboration that we have. I've been to the National Hurricane Center. We're located on our main campus, which is co-located with the Miami Office of the National Weather Service. And a quick question here, what building material was used? And Bill, I think you have a few things to say about that, how resilient that building is, huh?
Yeah, I had to unmute. Yeah, this was designed in the 90s, right after Hurricane Andrew, and the place where the Hurricane Center was operating out of off campus at the University of Miami was proven. It had been proven long before that it wasn't adequate for where we were going in the service, but the whole area learned a lesson about building codes and that hadn't been made.
Any tropical threat. All right, also a great collaboration that we had with the National Hurricane Center, and that was when Dr. Rick Knabb was director. We created together a Spanish hurricane website. So for folks out there that would like to share this website, hurricanes.fiu.edu, it's another resource to provide hurricane information. All right, getting into our topic. First thing I'm going to say is there are no natural disasters. Now, what does that mean? Well, natural hazards occur all the time, but they only become disasters when they collide with our human, physical, and economic systems. So we have built towns and cities where natural hazards occur. So that natural disaster term puts too much blame on nature and not enough on how and where we have built our communities and how we have created our own exposures and vulnerabilities. So in a way, by blaming the disaster on Mother Nature or the act of God, decision makers are then off the hook for being responsible for vulnerabilities in their community. So it fosters the idea that no matter what decisions are taken, by local policy makers, the event would occur anyway, and there's little that we can do about it. But there is something we can do. Hazard risk equation, very familiar with insurance companies. And I wanted to start off with this as kind of a big picture talk with regards to resilience and mitigation and how the wall of wind fits with this whole message and mission of resilience. And when you look at this equation on the left-hand side, you see EMR, DR, and CAT-R. That relates to, the end result of what happens on the right-hand side. H is the hazard, EX is exposure, and V is vulnerability. So depending on the H, the hazard, how much exposure is there, and what are the vulnerabilities in that community will then determine that left-hand side. EM is either just an emergency, D, a disaster, or worst case, a catastrophe. So to kind of put that equation to work, if you will, let's take an H example. Let's go with Hurricane Irma approaching Florida. And you look at now exposure, EX, from the right-hand side of the equation, our population, which has exploded from 1950 to 2015. And you notice the areas in red all along the coastlines. You look at EX, another variable, Florida housing, and the increase of homes from 1950 to 2019. So lots of exposure. Now, what about vulnerability? Well, Florida does have the strongest building codes, but still, here's an example of a home in the Keys after Irma. And you can see the one in the center was built 2014, a newer code, but homes on either side built to older codes. Hurricane Michael, another example, storm hitting the Florida Panhandle. And many of us have seen this picture where we look at a home that was built code or even code plus, and then older construction on either side that did not do so well. So again, that's big picture look at what we do at the Extreme Events Institute. It's another way to carry this conversation. And when we talk about the hurricane season and exposure and vulnerability, and what we're all trying to do is make it less impactful, meaning hopefully just an emergency and not a disaster or catastrophe. So with that in mind, I have a video here that talks about it's a trailer, and it's a video that about Built to Last. It's a documentary that we worked collaboratively with and with the Resilience Action Fund nonprofit. And for anyone out there that would be interested in running this program on your television station or having to show this program to audiences, it's a big picture look as what we can do worldwide as far as hazards and the risks.
Around the world, disasters are on the increase. In the past 10 years, earthquakes, heat waves, floods, hurricanes, fires, and volcanoes have killed over 1 million people, affected another 2 billion, and caused $4.5 trillion in damage.
I just never saw that much water. This street was probably this high.
The first words I said was, "Oh my God, everybody's dead." There's nobody coming out.
Ito dati itong bahay namin. Andun
Where we look for shelter, but when a disaster strikes, we're on the front line. If you think your house is safe, think again.
The house was destroyed by the flood.
We're going to reveal the hidden risks and ask, is your home built to last?
Building codes are critically important to life safety and property protection.
The public, they need to be asking these questions of the builder. Why won't you build me a home that will survive?
It's either pay a little more now or pay a hell of a lot more later.
We're going to discover how you can make your home safer.
Disasters are not natural. Nature provides events, but we provide the vulnerabilities that take a natural event and make it into a disaster or worse, a catastrophe.
So again, if you're interested in showing this program on your television station, media outlet, or to an audience, let us know, let me know, and we can set that up and make sure you get it. Alex, I'm going to jump out of the PowerPoint real quick just to double check my volume and make sure we are good in that respect.
You're good.
All right, excellent. All right, well, we've seen, this is a famous picture. We all know from the Boulevard Peninsula, this home and this homeowner, it was damaged in 2005 by Rita. They rebuilt, and then this is the end result after Ike in 2008. And every $1 spent on mitigation saves at least $6 in damage and cleanup. So it really makes financial sense. This has to do with house hunting. On the left-hand side, I put Erik and then Erik's wife. And we had to go shopping for a home about 4 years ago here in South Florida. So, of course, the real estate agent said, okay, what's on your list? And I said, well, Mr. Mitigation Meteorologist, I'm looking for CBS construction, mitigation to shutters, a hip roof. On the right-hand side, we need to then change how things are done in the marketplace and educate consumers to become more resilient, smart. And our realtor laughed at our lists, but she said, Erik, I get it. And she combined the lists, and we got a great home. That home is built to the building code. It's the minimum required to build that home. And it's not the maximum of what you can do against wind and water. So if consumers will demand stronger and safer homes, then eventually we could get stronger and safer homes. So with this kind of approach, we can drive the marketplace. This is something brand new from the Resilience Action Fund, and Eris Papadopoulos, who's with the Extreme Events Institute, came up with this quiz. It only takes 2 minutes. There's only 4 questions, but how resilient, smart are you? If you were picking a house, would you choose A or B? So when you do this short quiz, it brings up these issues on how you go shopping for a home. The Insurance Institute of Business and Home Safety has done a lot of great work. You saw in that trailer, their demonstrations with their fan research facility, but they also have been doing surveys and have come up with a score for how good are the building codes in your state. And you could see Florida ranks 95 out of 100 at the top, and at the bottom we have 17 out of 100 at the bottom. So that's the kind of way that consumers can educate themselves about building codes as well. All right, so now the Wall of Wind. It's a great facility. It's a Nahiri experimental facility. We're one of a network of experimental facilities connected with the Nahiri program and the National Science Foundation. So I'm going to show another video here now that's going to talk about this whole Nahiri network, and you're going to see the great works that's done by many universities nationwide that are involved in this particular network.
Hazards that carry research infrastructure has leading generation. U.S. spans groundbreaking concepts to protect homes, businesses, and civil infrastructure from the peril of earthquakes, wind, and water. NSF's investment in NERI continues this legacy of innovative thinking, ensuring that state-of-the-art cyber infrastructure, simulation technologies, and laboratories are available to the natural hazards research community. And NSF strongly encourages integration and interdisciplinary collaboration, bringing teams of engineers and social scientists together to tackle the most complex problems associated with hazards research. In a world ever more turbulent, NERI envisions resilient civil infrastructure built to withstand extreme events. The NERI network and the associated natural hazards research community is committed to generating knowledge to help ensure that communities prosper and thrive.
Okay, and now here's a video that's specifically now about the Wall of Wind.
The 12-fan Wall of Wind facility at FIU, which we call the WOW,
is the largest and most powerful hurricane simulation facility in a university setting that can simulate Category 5 hurricane wind, the highest rating on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane scale.
The wall of wind allows for wind loading experiments on various structures at multiple scales. And because it is an open jet facility, it is capable of doing destructive testing on structures to study their failure and collapse modes without the risk of damaging the wind tunnel. The wall of wind can do holistic system level testing. That means we can test structures with the components and connections as integral part of those structures and study the system level performance. We can also look at wind-driven rain intrusion into actual building envelope, and we can study progressive damage of the system. So this is a new way of looking at hurricane impacts on building systems, because building envelopes are one of the most vulnerable elements in hurricanes.
Here in the control room for the wall of wind, we can monitor a lot of the systems that are part of the wall of wind, but we can also control them. We can control our pressure scanning systems, wind speed measurement devices, load cells, force balances, transducers, and a lot of many other instruments that we have available in this facility. We also have a system with high definition cameras that we can see over here and record when a part of the model failed and how it fails.
Our safety program includes personnel safety, which includes trainings through the Environmental Health and Safety Department within Florida International University. Also includes safety protocol to ensure the safety of all equipment within the wall of wind.
The wall of wind is a very versatile wind testing facility. It can test up to speeds that are equivalent to Category 5 hurricane speeds, 160 miles an hour. And it also simulates the wind profile and turbulence of natural winds very well. So we have already tested, and we will continue to test, a wide variety of different research projects in this facility. For example, we have tested full-scale systems for roofing, like standing seam metal roofs, roof paving system, tiles, shingles, and so on. Those can be tested essentially at full scale, and it allows us to look at the way the whole system performs under wind loading, as well as its interaction with the wind loading. So that's a very important role of this facility. We also have been developing techniques that are applicable to smaller structures, which we call partial turbulence simulation, which allows us to put relatively large-scale models in the facility, and we combine the test data with other analysis and computational methods to give us predictions that include all the big-scale turbulence that we may not be able to include at that scale in this facility. We've done testing related to the transportation industry. One example would be variable message signs. We've done a project here with a PhD student whereby we've refined the aerodynamic coefficients used in the AASHTO code and the gust factors, and we've looked at the phenomena of vortex shedding and galloping, which could cause vibrations of these structures at high wind speeds. That's another example of the application of this kind of facility.
One of the most important aspects of wind engineering research is related to codification of research findings. So here at the Wall of Wind, we test small, large, and full-scale models in order to extract those important information that we can use in order to enhance current building codes and wind standards. The codification process in these type of studies has a direct impact on people's safety and economic development of our community.
So the STEM Transformation Institute makes use of this classroom to allow students to learn about their sciences in the classroom as scientists. In this case, this is a bridge between the Wall of Wind and students learning in the classroom. So it brings the Wall of Wind straight into this classroom where students are going to learn about it through this active learning process.
Wall of Wind was used to develop and validate various innovative mitigation techniques for lessening hurricane impacts on structures. One example is the validation of aero edge, which are edge devices that can be put on roof to reduce the wind uplift damage on roof components. This product was developed by the industry partner of the Wall of Wind and has been patented. Wall of Wind has proved to be a multi-user research infrastructure, both for national and international researchers.
The vision of the Wall of Wind facility is to significantly advance the state-of-the-art in wind engineering research and education, and to impart resiliency and sustainability to new and existing buildings, cladding systems, and lifeline infrastructure, so as to prevent wind hazards from becoming disasters.
All right, so very good. So how does the Wall of Wind work? Well, here's just a kind of a schematic diagram. On the left-hand side, you have the fans, but to get hurricane speed, there's an area just behind the fans where we contracted that space, and that law of physics, contracting the space, the air coming in on the one side will then exit the other side much faster. So our wind engineers were able to make it work so we could get those high hurricane wind speeds. And then in terms of the atmospheric section and with roughness features, we were able to create a wind flow that matches real life, where wind increases with height. So by the time the wind reaches that structure, it's as close to what Mother Nature. So this is a particular study on high rises, for example, in any major city, and the balconies, and what are the forces that are occurring in those situations. And also we're doing an interesting study as a result after Hurricane Irma, after damage surveys were done on elevated structures, on stilts or pylons, and realizing that there can be differences on the loads and stresses, and it has to do also with what they do on the ground floor and closing it off. So our wind engineering team has been looking at that, and what are those stresses and wind stresses from wind, and because of all coastal communities that build homes in this way, and also a collaboration with one of the other Nahiri network universities, Oregon State, and as they're looking at the water aspect, which has a lot of power on the base of that structure as well. And this is an example of how one of our structures for elevated houses looked, and they're all wired up, if you will, with pressure instrumentation, so we really get a three-dimensional view of what's happening in and around that whole structure. On the left-hand side, you see that heart shape. It's called scouring on a flat roof. On the right-hand side, you see these turbines. This is a patent-pending new invention with FIU, and because of those turbines, it reduces the load at the corners from these vortices forming. You notice the gravel's not disappearing, but also the wind turbines produce electricity. So it's an idea that not only mitigates, but it also then is green in terms of creating electricity, let's say for a home and its power needs after a storm. And here's one more video I want to show here with regards to what we did for a media team that wanted to come in and see the Wall of Wind, and it's for a media team that is hoping to still do an IMAX film with some of this video. They wanted to see a demonstration that was exciting and a structure blowing apart, but we wanted a teachable moment here at FIU. So we combined the two. Our wind engineers came up with this concept and came up with a structure that would show both. So here's the structure, and we're putting little items in front of the home. And here's the front side, we call the strong side, with metal shutters and roof tie downs. And we had a weak side, the opposite side, which didn't have the metal shutters or roof tie downs. So we first hit the strong side with up to Cat 4 winds and no failure, and reinforced for less than $250. Then we spun the same structure around without those mitigation, and watch what happens. So it was a kind of a basic demonstration, but very illustrative, very visual, on showing how the mitigation can work in that roof. Watch the flying debris, and of course that happens in any hurricane event as structures start falling apart, but that roof, that goes airborne. And imagine then the kinds of things that are happening during a Hurricane Laura or a Hurricane Michael or a Hurricane Irma. and that roof flew 200 feet downwind and hit our debris wall. And that's why the debris wall is there. So we've done these studies. There's gable roof, hip roof, flat roof. We know the hip roof is the best, more aerodynamic shape. And wind engineers look at all these positive and negative forces on a building. On the positive side, the wind coming in, the windward side, and then the opposite side, the leeward side with negative forces, and how that's stressing the walls and the roof. And of course, we all know to hold down that roof, the importance of hurricane straps. And garage doors can be a weak link. They're the largest opening. So having a code-approved garage door can be very important in mitigating that home. And of course, this is something we still need to stop, tape. Tape does nothing, right? So we've gone well beyond that with our education and knowledge. And famous pictures, why do we mitigate our window openings? Well, famous picture from Andrew with the piece of wood through the palm tree, but we saw similar pictures, for example, Hurricane Maria. Same kind of thing. So stopping and protecting that home from flying debris. And something that came out, some of you may already know, the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety says also, besides protecting all your exterior doors and windows, inside your home, close all your interior doors before the storm. It helps to compartmentalize this to increase the strength of that home to make it more resilient, and do that with a certified wind mitigation inspector. Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety has a great program. If you're going to redo your roof, it's called Fortified Home. If you're not aware of it, it's a great program. And we've mentioned that there's many universities doing great work in this area, but also just, also want to, show here some of the other great nonprofit agencies that are involved. Obviously, FEMA, a government agency, but the National Institute of Building Sciences, Smart Home America, we mentioned the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, the Resilience Action Fund, the International Hurricane Protection Association, which is a nonprofit that has tremendous amount of information on window and door mitigation projects, and of course, the Federal Alliance for Safe Homes. All of these organizations doing great work with this mission of resilience. Again, there's my contact information, esalna@fiu.edu, and of course, our social addresses, Facebook and Twitter, and hope to hear from you on any of these topics and try to help you out with this information. So thank you. That ends the presentation part of the program. So Bill and Alex, we can go from there.
Awesome. Fond memories of seeing some of that stuff come to fruition. It was still kind of its embryonic stage when I was at NHC. It's a wonderful system you've got there. Going back to, I really was intrigued by your slides that showed Florida, the 19 increase and
point and one did in urbanization. And when you talk about cities and towns and buildings in harm's way, that exposure, and I related to the hazard risk equation, that exposure number keeps growing and growing and growing. So there is a value, right, to that. But in the earlier years, that vulnerability aspect, building codes, and even today, how are they allowing new construction and along the coastlines? Everyone wants to be by the water, by the ocean, or in a warmer climate. But obviously knowing there's a big risk in those areas, so we have to meet that challenge of being resilient, right?
Yeah, and that leads me to my next question perfectly. The building code issues. Every time I attend a meeting where a building code can do, why do you think we've had such a struggle getting buy-in on wind mitigation from the building industry? As you pointed out, it doesn't cost that much to strengthen a house.
It's not the million-dollar question. And trying to now defend why it should or should not be there. And when you think about the building industry and so on, research has shown, the cost of building a structure from the ground up, a brand new home, that in many cases it shouldn't add much more than 10% to the front end over a 30-year loan. That's not much more to get yourself in a place that's safer and more resilient. And so it wouldn't necessarily put the building industry out of business, but all businesses have margins and they look at their budgets, and there is a cost to materials. But it comes back, I think, and part of it to the consumer, and we as residents moving forward and getting involved with local policy decisions that are made with regards to building codes and so on and so forth, and kind of demanding Extreme Events Institute and others, getting this message out there to start demanding it. We've built, there are stronger materials or stronger techniques of putting that house together and holding it together. Hurricane straps are cheap, right? They're pennies on the dollar. And how that can hold down that roof, which is a huge in terms of, mitigating damage. So, why has it been slow? Well, there's people slow in learning or slow in wanting to change, or when economics come into play, and it's very difficult. And when it becomes political. So I think it's just a challenge that we just have to keep on working forward with to improve it.
Yeah, maybe we could talk to the fire people, because they've been much more successful at improving the lowering of the risk of fire in houses than we perhaps have. Mm-hmm. You say a 10% increase in cost, is that to like a Miami-Dade standard? What kind of wind load is that kind of a structure built to? Right.
There's similar results have come, and that was a demonstration home built during when President Clinton was in office, and Project FEMA with mitigated.
That's one reason I went with him. I asked him, what's the cost differential on the house? And he said, let me get back to you. And he came back. Cool. Tim, what do you got from the listeners out there?
I got a couple of comments. One, Casper wants to know, can the wall of wind
and a 160? But in terms of that wind flow and the flow coming out of the flow management to hit that structure is as close to what a hurricane environment wind flow would be. And that's what our wind engineers, who are the experts on this, are constantly working on.
With all of the things in the foreground that create the drag near the ground and everything like that. And also, I'm assuming create some vortices within that somehow. Does it do that in some way? Is there any?
Well, right. In terms of, we know the hurricane wind is not a straight, nice, smooth laminar flow, except unless you get way out right over the ocean and up high. But once it comes over land, you're going to have friction. And so you notice on the wall of wind, those friction triangles in the one video, but then we've now advanced to where we can create what's called in various environments, one of which would be like an urban environment that would be then something like a suburban or city area with buildings and trees. So that's the studies being done.
And look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Absolutely, Bill. Thank you. Same to you and Alex and Tim. Absolutely to do this in person, but thank goodness with technology, right? And with Zoom, and we're able to share and from even our own home. So I'm in my neighbor's home right next door because I had to make a quick change on connecting today. So we made it all work.
Eric, thanks for making it work. We know you're working hard to get on here, and we appreciate that. I think the fact that everybody's going back to school and all the kids are on the internet, on the computer right now, might be eating into a little bit of our bandwidth for everybody. So for what's coming up next.
All right. Thank you very much, Eric. Thank you, Tim and Bill. Great show again. Tomorrow, take a look. Boy, we've got Brian McNulty. We were wondering what's Fujiwara and a whole bunch of other interesting things. Brian's the guy who can tell you. We'll have him tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Thanks so much for joining us here today. And don't forget, our sponsors are USAA, South Padre Island Convention and Tourist Bureau, and Plylux Hurricane Clips.